we'll start in 1 minute. Just waiting for more people to get here. Does everyone see recording on their screen? Cool, awesome. Yeah, I'll just send this back to you guys so that you can, things you want to look back at and practice too. You'll have some reference. You just give it another minute. See some people coming in. Oh yeah, I have to allow it. Yeah, I can allow you to unmute you. Let me see. Okay, I think you should be good.
Thanks. I don't mind being muted. I just wasn't sure if it was supposed to be like that or not.
Yeah, I think when I start, I'm gonna do it because what happens, especially with the recording, like whoever speaks kind of takes over the screen, and I think it would be just a lot of even if there's little sounds, you know, it'll kind of start bouncing around. So for and then if I have anyone up, I'll unmute them.
Sure.
At least it actually helps, so I can figure out like how to personally unmute people. So that'll be the reason.
Great.
Cool. Well, yeah,
Thanks.
let's get started then. So I'm gonna mute everyone just for that sake. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here and welcome to this like first edition of this masterclass. If you did see in the email how it's gonna go, we're just gonna do sections by sections. I sent you guys a tab. Don't look at the rhythm side of that tab. That's like, it's complete BS. Really what we're kind of looking at is the shapes, and then we'll talk about how to put the patterns together. Just because, if you have the book, it's already, you're at the advantage of having the amounts of times and the rhythms. So I was just trying to get like a compressed version to get to you so that you can keep up with the parts, okay? So we'll do kind of do an overview of each part, and then maybe just a little Q&A kind of thing. Maybe keep it at 1 or 2 questions per section, and then just keep going, okay? So let's first talk about the tuning. So is everyone actually in that tuning? Maybe I'll go to gallery view. Good? Cool. All right. Well, just even as a brief explanation about this tuning, I know Chris calls it like Todd's tuning, and part of that's because most of the songs that he wrote, like Night Letters, Dark Matters, and I Think This Is Your Life, he kind of came up with this tuning. And really from supporting cast onward, everything was in E flat. And it's just taking the guitar and tuning it down a half step, and then just dropping that C down to, or that E flat down to a C. So yeah, let's start with the first thing that you're gonna do in this song. Okay, let me just get this going real quick. Okay, so you don't see this in this tab book, but you can see the shape that's gonna appear. We're gonna be in 5th position, and the fingers are gonna be the 2nd finger on the 6th fret of D, the pinky on the 8th fret of G, and the 1st finger on the 5th fret of B, and then the open A and open E. So this is the thing that Chris plays live, where it's just a volume swell. So what you want to do is make sure your volume's at 0. And really, with this kind of strum too, just so that it has a bit of a rippling effect, you want to roll your strum rather than give it a nice like kind of full strum. Those are called rolls. So you'll roll it, and then immediately gradually bring the volume up. So I'll do it again. Now, depending on your volume knob and like how much of how much room you have for that, like you want to make it gradual so it does feel like a swell. Obviously, if you have more gain, it helps. But the idea with volume swells is don't wait, because you're really relying on the initial attack of the string to get the sound. Okay, so that's how the song begins, or the record even. And then we're going to start with the first riff. So I'll just do a little playthrough of that. So. So let's talk about what this part is doing. So on the tab, I've really just outlined what I call are like the 3 events of this rhythm guitar part. So first event is this bar shape where it's just 2 across the E, A, and D strings. Okay. The second event is this power chord, the E power chord, which is on 7, 9, 9. So it's just first, third, and fourth finger. And then the next event is all the palm muting that happens on the low open E string. Okay, I'll talk about rhythm in a second. But basically, whenever you're going from this distance, from the lower distance across the neck, the key here on the accuracy is just looking ahead. Even though everything's happening here, if you keep looking there, you're gonna be more guessing about that. So just anticipate that and look ahead before you even get to that. So like right at that point, almost like a third strum is when I start looking at the target. The way I like to think about it is like shooting a basketball hoop. Like I'm not gonna, unless I was Kobe or something. But I'm gonna look at my target because that's what I'm trying to hit. So you just have to just be one step ahead. And with fast music, it can be a little bit tricky, but just give yourself an exact cue. For me, it would be that third strum. So right ahead, third one. Okay, make sense? Okay. Drop C does like to go out of tune a little bit, so let me just kind of fix that a second. Sorry. Cool. Okay. So that's the first bit, and then notice those markings before the power chord. That means we slide into this. So you really want to make sure that you get that. That's part of like the attitude of the part. So to prep for that, you really actually have to prep the power chord in advance, somewhere closer to the original chord. So you do the 3, I'll slow it down. And then I form the power chord either here, if I'm moving, maybe 4th fret, but no further than that. So you have to prep it in advance, that shape too. That's like the hidden step. So you can even practice that. Okay, and then the idea is, and if you're looking at your target, you always nail it. Okay. Cool. So let's move on from there. Let's talk about the actual rhythm of this first bit. So that whole thing, like when we play this live, it's a 4 count, but the first strum actually comes in before the next 1 beat. So from a technical standpoint, those are called pickups. It's I like to actually nickname them hiccups because they're whenever, especially at the beginning of a song, whenever the song doesn't start right on beat 1. So it begins on any other beat than the next beat 1. It's almost like a false start, like a perfect example is like in a football game whenever they're supposed to hike the ball and they do it a little early. That to me is actually exactly what a pickup is, obviously intentional. So the idea here is that we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and. It comes in on the and right before the 1. Okay. So I call it the hiccup kind of feel because it does feel like it just jolts at you. It's unexpected. Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now that hiccup one, you can kind of treat it like it's on its own. And then the 3 that follow them, this whole riff kind of grooves, especially on this chord, grooves in chunks of 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. That's how I count it. Now that might not be technical, but it helps to organize it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Yep. Make sense? Cool. Awesome. So let's so that's to me 2 out of the 3 events. There's this lower beginning chord, this power chord that's really only played once. We slide into it. And then the third event is the chugging on the low E string. Okay. So this is kind of the same thing. It doesn't really come in on like the number part of the beat. It comes in somewhere before. So there's various ways you can count this. I'd say just choose one route and make sure you're consistent with it. And this is actually a little bit of a snippet, like in the tab, of what the rhythm is. And these are called 16th notes, and they move in 4 note groupings. So the way to think about it, if we're counting from this top, it's and 1, 2, 3, 1, and a 2E, and a 3E, and a 4E, and a 1E, and a 2E, and a 3E, and a 4, and. Okay. So that's the amount of times that happens. A lot of it's based on feel, but you just want to kind of cycle it where you can hear the 4 note groupings. Okay, so I'll do it one more time so you have it as reference. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. So here, in terms of technique-wise and how to get this this picking nice and tight to where it doesn't feel like it's wobbly, it really, there's a bit of a base with your hand. Like you want to use kind of like the side, the razor edge of your hand to set yourself up against the bridge, and just try to keep as much of your body still. What I like to do is I like to use the razor edge of the pick, and that's actually what's tackling on the string. And then when I come in the upstroke, it's the razor edge of the other side. Okay, so a nice angle actually helps the kind of faster picking. Or flat on is a little bit too heavy. So think it like you want it to be nice and like slide off and on. Okay, so one of the things that I do when I'm practicing rhythms is I'll actually remove the left hand, and you're going to see me say that a lot today with a lot of these parts, because this is especially when we get to the part that happens after this, it's very percussive. So this really helps to bring that out. So what I would do is even just outline the rhythm without the left hand. So what this helps you to do, it helps you to remember what the hand should feel like. And sometimes if you take out the left hand, which is kind of distracting you because you're kind of trying to keep track of everything, it lets you tune in. And eventually when you put them together, you feel like you are able to actually divide your view in that way, where it feels like you're confident on both evenly. So that's something I'd recommend. And the thing to pay attention to is what are the different textures depending on these 3 events. So you have 3 strings, the E, A, and D, and then moving to 3 strings, the A, D, and G, kind of working through that transition, both downstrokes, and then compressing down to the lower. Oh, can you hear? Are you not hearing the guitar? Here, I'll unmute everyone. A few times it cuts out. Oh, bummer. I'll crank it out. It's just loud enough that it compresses it. Okay, well, let me know if you need me to. Oh yeah, okay. Just let me know if I need to replay anything so you can hear it its entirety. Maybe we'll catch it where it doesn't cut off. But thanks for letting me know. So sorry about that. Technology. Cool. So that's what I'd work on, is just the kind of the going in between the textures, and also string sets. You know, just making sure you're accurate there. And what's important is that when you strum something, don't let the pick go off, like once you hit the last string of a part, make sure you kind of like keep close, because the farther you go, the farther distance you have to travel and re-find your place. So like in the example of the first chord, when I'm done strumming, my pick is ending. It does not pass the G. Like it travels as far as it needs to, but I stay close so that when I have to come back to catch the power chord on the A, it's almost right there. And that's what's going to make a difference for speed. You know, the more distance you have to travel, it's obviously slowing you down. So I would practice that. And later we'll talk, I sent you a couple exercises to where we can talk about working on that fast chugging speed. But really it's about keeping your whole body relaxed, kind of planting your hand, having that angle of the pick, and just let this come from the wrist. Nothing else. Too much movement, you're also exerting a lot of energy. You're going to exhaust yourself. You can do a lot with just your wrist. Then you can, live just go crazy, and that's the beauty of it. Well, just like this little bit of things happening. One last thing about that. Think of it like if you're coloring, like shading. It has a kind of similar motion. So imagine that. Again, we'll talk about that a little later. Okay. Well, yeah, let me, before we get into Chris's lead at the beginning, I do want to open this up, see if anyone has any questions. So maybe in the chat, I'll take the first two questions of this part. Any kind of thing you may want to see. No questions? Here I go. We can just keep going. Oh, I didn't catch it. Do you only do downstrokes? You do downstrokes on the chords, yeah, and then at the chugging part, yeah, my bad. There's so many things to talk about, so I missed the obvious. That one you'll do alternate picking, so it's an even subdivision. So it's just after the chord. These you can think of them as being staccato too, kind of choppy. By staccato, that just means short, so you kind of bounce off the string. And then you slide into that. And then you start on a down strum, so just down. So I'll even say it actually. Down, up, 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 down. Just the whole time. And you'll end on an up, which will just smoothly transition back to the chord down. Yeah, good question. Cool, let's move on to the lead. So if you look at the tab, it says intro lead shapes. This is not actually a part of the song. It's just kind of outlining the two main shapes that you'll need to play this part. And what they are is actually, the first one is the one that we started on in the song. So that's the 6th fret on D, 8th fret on G, 1st fret on B, or first finger on the 5th fret of B, and then open. Okay. The second shape you'll need for the lead is almost exactly the same, but the only thing you're doing is swapping the second finger 6 for the third finger 7. Okay. The important thing here is your thumb, actually. So whenever you're in a position, and position is just labeling the 4 fingers of your left hand to 4 frets. So this is 5th position because it's labeled after whatever fret the first finger is assigned to. So being that it's the 5th fret, it's 5th position. So it's just 5, 6, 7, 8. No matter what you would do here, if it's 5th position, these are the fingers that are assigned. So we want to keep it that way. The main thing here, so that it's not lopsided and difficult, is line up your thumb with the second finger. Okay, so you have that. Because that just balances your hand, and it helps for reachability surrounding it. And the idea is that between these two shapes, so you don't want to move your hand so much. It's just a nice, smooth exchange. Okay. So those are the main two chord shapes in this lead. Okay. Make sense? Cool. Okay, so before we actually get to those two main shapes, we just have kind of some lead-in notes. So those two, if you look, it says there's a 4 Roman numeral. The Roman numerals are actually designating what the positions are. So this is 4th position. So we have So you can see our first finger is assigned to 4th fret. So it's just 4, 5, 6, 7. And we assign based on the distances, same distance of frets, same distance fingers. So we're gonna catch, and by the way, on these tabs too, you'll see if you forget some of the finger markings, they're actually written here. They're all the way above the rhythm staff. There's that 3 and the 1. Same thing with the beginning. Okay, so we have 3rd finger on the 6th fret. We're going down, up, and then we want to shift to 5th position for this next bit, and then form the shape. And then the pattern here for this is just, it's kind of like slow down sweep picking, where because we're just going the same direction, ascending, we're just going to go down 4 times, and then up 3. And the way to really execute this in terms of the organization is in 3s. That's what triplets are. So you'd count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So all together so far, the first 2 notes on their own, and then transition to this. And I'll talk about this transition so you can work on getting it nice and smooth. And then back, this next measure, we go back to 4th position. So this whole lead part is going between these 2. Starts in 4, goes up to 5 with the chord shapes, and then back to 4. So the way to think about this is there's like this line that's more melodic meaning just 1 note at a time, and then this one's that's more harmonic, which means we're holding a chord and we're playing the notes in the chord, so it's creating some overlapping tones, like things that are creating some layering. Okay, and then it goes back to the single note one. So I'll play the whole part through so you can hear it, and then we'll talk a little more about it. And that's 1 round of that. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the thing, let's talk about the transition, because you're gonna play these 2 notes on their own, and this chord can feel kind of tricky. And this is what's also gonna come up in this song a lot, is a lot of the shapes can be a little bit tricky to get into, and that's what I really want to focus on. So what happens is that if you think about the last thing that happens in the single note lead, it's just our first finger ends up alone. And the beginning of the next shape is this 2nd and 4th finger. What you want to do is actually already prepare for that, kind of outline that shape and let it even hover over those strings and same fret distance. So that what you do, being that, and you're prepping it in 4th position, but when you're done in 4th position, all you do is just move it to the right and drop it in to 5th. So that just is like a preparatory technique. So I have the shape outlined, scoot it over, and then try to drop it in. What's great is too that this is an idea called sequential preparation, is that because you're not needing this whole shape all at once for the first time you play it, is that you can actually prepare it as your right hand is playing it, meaning 1 note at a time in a sequence. So it actually gives you time, especially with that first finger, to travel and get there by the time you need to play it. So again, and a great way to practice this is to actually transition from the 2 notes of the lead into the shape in the same position. So meaning omitting the shift, so you can just practice going between the 2. So, and that's something that I do with practicing transitions that are hard in terms of the chords, is practice it in the same position. It's not made to be like, to sound good. It's purely left hand kind of shaping work. So, and because what this does, it tells you where you're messing up too. Because if you're doing this and then it's like, okay, I can see my pinky's the one lagging, you can actually isolate that. And then a step further would be actually to play the part like you would, but again, without the shift. So maybe just up to the 4 notes and just loop that. Once you feel like you've got that down good enough, a couple times, my whole thing is do something right 3 times, and that feels like it passes the test. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to now take it up a notch, and now I can add the shift. So I'd go, and then the exchange. So at this point, what happens is we have to move back. So the thumb is the dictator of the position. So the thumb has to move back to 4th position to align us nicely into the. But that's pretty, just kind of simple type of playing, single note, almost pentatonic DC shape like. Okay. So with the first shape again, or the beginning, 4th position, have your thumb behind the 5th fret. When you go up to the chords, have the thumb behind the 6th fret, and then back to the single notes, return it to the 5th fret. That's just gonna make everything align so you can just feel like the fingers drop in. Okay. Right at the, so you do that a few times, and then right at the end, there's this kind of compositional technique called expansion. It's when you take the end of a phrase and you just repeat it again, and that's what he does with the lead. So the first few times we had the right, but he repeats the so the right at the end you're just going to repeat that 6 4 7 6 4 7. Okay. Any questions about that part? Put it in the chat and I'll unmute you if you want to, or if you want to see anything, need anything further explained. Good. Oh, play 1 time full speed. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, let me see. So I'll do 1 time full speed. Cool. That help? Awesome. When you do your slow sweep, is there any benefit to starting your upstroke on the 2nd string? Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So this question is, when you do your slow sweep, is there any benefit to starting your upstroke on the 2nd string instead of on your 1st string? Yeah, because you're on the way up, even though it's grouped in 3s, and I actually understand that idea of like, should you just kind of keep the almost picking grouping the same, being that it moves in 3s, 1 2 3 1 2 3. So your pick's already going in that direction. You wouldn't want to change it because you're just doing more work. This is an idea called directional picking, is that when you're changing strings and if you already picked a certain way and you're going to play the string in that same direction, just follow through with the same directional path. So in this case, it just makes it to where the picks have all, it's kind of just, it's more to your advantage because gravity's on your side too. You're just following through and then you just spin back around. Something I should note about this part to really get the most out of the speed too is that when you pick downwards in this sequence, especially at the beginning, 4 in a row, once you finish the first one, let the pick actually rest on the next string. Let it land there, so that it's already prepped, ready to go for the next attack. Because even just something as simple as picking and having the pick land in mid-air, you're gonna have to do more work to have to find the string where you could have already like bypassed that step. Just get it right there immediately. And that's for each one of them, obviously not the E because there's nothing after it. So, and then same on the up. But on the 7, because we're gonna have to change directions, let that one actually play in mid-air. But it's only the ones where you continue with the same direction, let the pick, and it'll land on the next string. Okay. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, let's go on to the next part. So I nicknamed the parts This one's called the sprint. So I'll do a little playthrough so you know what part I'm talking about. But this one, that's what it just feels like. It just feels like you sprint, you stop, you sprint, you stop. It's a lot of that going on, and there's a bunch of them. So let me just get it here. Okay. So starting right out of the intro. Oops, wrong thing. Fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not in practice at touring, being out. We'll do it again a little slower. Did you hear that okay? A lot of funny faces happening. I have no idea what's happening. You guys look happy, so at least there's that. You're not throwing virtual tomatoes at me. But okay, so this beginning part, and this part too is one of those that I would really just play the rhythm, just isolate it. And in these little sections. And the way I've broken up this tab is the way that I think of the events happening one at a time. And it's almost not true to rhythmic, like truthfulness, I guess. You know, like it's not really true to form, but it's kind of a way to clump it, which I think makes it easier. So the beginning is just going to be first finger. We're going to have the first finger on the 7th fret of D, and we just play these 2-string chords. Anytime you're playing something and you want to find a bit of a unity among parts, and in this case, the unifying thing is that you're playing the same 2 strings for all 4 chords. That should kind of put in your mind like, okay, that's an easy thing to hold on to, so I can anticipate keeping the hand nice and close. So it's just a 0, open A, and then a 7 on D. So, and then just move that down. And then this X thing, that's like muted, like those are called dead notes. It's just muting these strings. This is in a lot of Propagandhi songs, like even from like the early days, where it's like a percussive technique to just kind of hit them. Like you can think of them as open. It's adding a bit of almost like a fill, like that's the idea, is that you do like a bit of a kind of a value before the actual landing beat. Okay, so those are the ones that are harder to hear on the recording, by the way. Like, but what it helps to do is to keep the hand moving. Okay, so oops, not that. Okay. So because there's a dead note that requires no left hand, that's the point in which your hand needs to already travel to this point. So kind of do a little bit of juggling there. And same thing as the beginning, just look at your target. Just be one step ahead of your hands and make sure to look there so it doesn't feel like you've missed it and you have to catch up or you're guessing. Like really be comfortable with that. So at that point, I'm even looking. So yeah. So with just the right hand, it's just. That's something I would practice. And then put it together with the left hand. Okay. So let's go on to the next part. If you see the thing that kind of looks like the word dude, it's actually a directional kind of right hand directions. So it's down, up, down, and then up, down, down. So just so that you have a little, and the lines between it is per chord. So the first chord gets down, up, down. And then the next chord gets up. And then the next chord gets down, down. Okay. Let's talk about those 3 chords. So the first one's just a power chord on the A, D, and G strings. It's 4, 6, 6. And then what you want to do out of this one is set the finger down as a bar, remove 3 and 4, and put the second finger down on the 5th fret of B. So that's the second shape. Again, with this shape, because it's in the same position, the good thing to practice is just going between those 2 things. something that I do as a prep, whenever you're about to use a finger that is not being used in the current thing, but is going to be used in the next thing, try to prep it as much as you can. So in this case, I'm actually having the second finger linger kind of close to the B string. So it feels more like a drop in. Because if you kind of just don't pay attention to it, it's out there, you're like, oh shit, I need that thing. It's like you're grabbing it from space. So just try to keep it as close as possible. And I have a couple exercises too to work on, like finger independent stuff that should help with that if you're finding like it's hard to control. Just take some time to develop too. So yeah, left hand is just this power chord. To this chord, it's a 4, 4, 4, and then 5. Just first and second finger. And then we just take that, see that the whole idea of unifying the parts, the first finger is already set in the shape for the next chord. Just move it to a different place. Same thing, look at your target. Okay. A lot of this is just looking ahead at the next chord you're about to like fall into. Okay. So all together, and then these two you'll palm mute down. Okay. So down, up, down, up, down, down. Down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down. That's more the regular speed. Okay, so from the previous part. Okay. Make sense? Cool. So the next part is kind of like it's actually identical to what we just came from. So another one of okay. So easy enough there. All right, let's go to another main little bit that we see a few times in this part. This is like what we just did. It's more hyper cousin. So it starts on the same power chord, the 4, 6, 6 on the A, D, and G strings. I'm just gonna outline the left hand. We move up to power chord on 7, 9, 9, and then we move back to the 4, 6, 6 power chord. So those are the moves there. After that, and I like to call these like almost like inverted power chords. We take off the first finger and we're actually going to bring that second finger onto the 5th fret of the B string. So now it becomes 6, 6, 5, 0. Sounds. Okay. And then so that's just the 4th chord. And then the next chord after that is similar to this, but we replace the second finger, the first finger on the 4th fret. So you can see where, especially this one is the one I call like an inverted power chord. It's kind of similar, but it's just the first finger and the higher. Okay. So the chords so far in this part are. The important thing to know is that when you change to this chord, try not to just let the first finger be like, I'm done, fly out. Again, that's kind of pointless movement because you're actually going to slow yourself down if you just don't put it anywhere that matters. So think of where it's about to go. What's this one finger's next step? Kind of treat each finger as an entity like that so that you just get the most out of your movements. So in this case, put the second finger down, but look at where my first finger moves to. It starts to already curve, so it can just drop it. So kind of think of them as, think of that traveling distance. Like, and even this is a good practice, like kind of going from the two targets. Okay, so that's, let's talk about the right hand with this part. So for the first chord, it's a little faster than the previous one. It's a down, up, down, up, down. Just like that. It's pretty challenging on the recording to hear like the nuances here, but that's how fast it's going. It's, like I said before, it's like the hyper cousin of the previous part. So that's, and then we just boomerang to the next one. So notice the single down is for this next chord. So you can do down, up, down, up, down, down. And then back to the original chord is up, down. So slowly, and then I'll play it fast. So down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down. Okay, Same thing as before. Just do that right hand thing, kind of focus on that, make sure you've got the feel of it, and then plop in the left hand. It's one of those things, especially in a chord progression like that, it's very much this whole thing, because this hand's going up and down, and this one's going left and right. So it's kind of a weird thing, like it doesn't have a natural, like coordinated outcome when you first do it. So that's why I really recommend doing the isolating of the right and left hand. Okay. So and then after that, it's gonna be an up down. A little cleaner this time. Those last two are gonna be up, down. So down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. Make sense? Cool. So that's that measure. And then, so here's where we end up in this shape. So 6, 6, 4, 0. Like I said before, we try to find any kind of unifying factor here. The next shape, we're just going to already have it outlined. So the second finger is going to hover over the 5th fret on the G, right? And then that shape is how we're going to plop in smoothly into the next one, which is the 0 on A, the 7 on D, and then the 6 on G. Okay, so that's the transition. Oops, yeah. It just moves up 1 fret. And then back that 6, 6, you can just treat it like the shape it came from. The 3rd finger on D and the 4th finger on G, 6th fret. Okay, so from where we came from, then we do one of those again. Okay, so all together this part, and then those are all just one at a time. It's pretty, it resembles it's just a larger version of it with more notes. Okay, so all together. Play it again. Slower. The next part, so we're back to this power chord, back to this bar and 2nd finger shape, and then to the opening shape. These two are identical. The rhythm's identical to what we did, so we'll just kind of skim that for a second. The next part is just like the beginning. Now we do some chugging. So it's palm muted, same 2 strings and same notes, but it's 4 per chord for little chords. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and it's a down, up, down, up. And then another one of those dead notes to land on that. So all together that measure. Okay. And then the next measure is exactly like what we did before the. And then here we break off and we go higher. It starts the same. We got 6, 7. We take this 3, 2 finger, and that's kind of like a C major shape, right? We just move it up 2 frets to 8 and 9. So, first finger is just gonna catch this bar up here. So, it's an F major shape. It's just a major shape in a different place. We played that chord before, so. And then back to that original chord, which no palm mutes. And then we end on the power chord that we started on. Okay. So that's that section. Let me open up the chat before we move on? Because this was that was probably one of the hardest. I'm like, fuck, this one's gonna take a while because this section's pretty heavy. So does anyone have any questions? Put in the chat. I'll unmute you and we'll go from there. Well, it seems like everyone's good. Why do we have 2 Ds in a row? Bar 13. Let me check that out. It just has to do with the timing. So pretty commonly, like rhythm is a hierarchy. So you think like number beats versus weak beats. So that's like your 1 and 2 and 3 and. All the number beats are considered strong beats. And how we match that with the right hand is that those tend to be downstrokes. So like it would be like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So yeah, all the number beats get down because they're strong beats, and all the and beats get up. So right there, just it's probably just the way it's divided. I think the last down is might be a longer beat. So when you circle back around, the next down falls on another strong beat. So it's like yeah, it's like the way your hand, if you think like a pendulum motion, just keeping it moving. Rather than, because if you try to do that on the upstroke, it kind of goes against the natural like cycle of the beats, and then you're gonna feel like you're more confident in that rhythm. So it has to do with the spacing between those 2 chords. Yeah, someone put the sheet happening step shows a little bit more spacing. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was like, don't pay attention to rhythm here. I'm just kind of put in the program so you have the shapes. But that's what's great about the books, is that they actually, you can see the rhythms a little bit more clearly stated. Cool, let's go on to the next part. So I call this the wind up. It's actually just a few of the same chords that we've seen. Just this inverted power chord shape, but the one with the second finger, the 6 6 5 0 1, and then we want to do 3 of these each. So it's down up down, and then we change to the one with the fourth fret, first finger, up down up, back to the one with the 5th fret, down up down, and back with the one with the 4th fret, and then up. So. Actually, this brings up a good point, because you just talked about rhythm, like why we had 2 down rows, because this seems like it goes against what I just said. The exception is triplets. Triplets are an odd subdivision, you know, if you think they move in 3s. So this is a great example in comparison to the last one, which was more of it was an even subdivision, so 8th notes and 16th notes. Those are the ones that kind of move like 1 and 2 and 3 and, or 1 and a 2 and a, kind of groups of 2 and 4. Being that they're even, it's pretty evenly spaced out with a pick. It's just down, up, down, up, down. I call those the walking rhythms, because they kind of match the way you walk. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Triplets, being that they're odd, that they move in groups of 3, what happens is that the pattern kind of reverses itself. So this is exactly what you're seeing here, where we go down, up, down, up, down, up. So where it was down, up, down for the first 3, it reversed itself to up, down, up, and then it returns. The idea here is so that you can just keep your hand flowing, like a pendulum motion, down, up, down. There are times like when you're doing, like, let's say like your Iron Maiden, like there are times where you actually do the restart of the stroke, so down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. That's what gives that kind of galloping sound, because we're reiterating beat 1 again. But these don't. They're more of like we're keeping the strumming the same, so it actually is a little bit smoother. So something to kind of think about in terms of how to get accents with triplets versus this, which doesn't have as much of an accent. But the way you want it to feel is 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. So and just keep your hand kind of moving, like a nice like pendulum motion. Keep it feeling exactly the same down as it does up. chorus does that, and then the rest of us goes back to the first chord. The accents, and back to the. Now let's get to the part with the words coming in. Let me play one more time, a little faster. Check. Okay, so this part, let's talk about the first thing that happens. It's two events. The main power chord we've seen, which is that 4-6-6. Okay, it's like the root of the song. So you just do that once, and then you have to move to second position. That should be like immediately after you're doing that, bail and get your first finger closely hovered over the second fret of the low E, and then you're gonna do 16 notes, 1 E, and where the first finger comes in on the second fret on the third one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another way to count it. I'm going down, up, and palm muted. Then you do one whole cycle of that again. What's great about open strings is that they give you a head start to move wherever you need to. Take advantage of that, you know? So you have the, I'm already on the move to that point. Once I'm done, that last open string happens, I'm already moving back, just so you can catch it in time. My thumb, actually you can see it better, just going like this. I'm not moving it too much. Fourth position, so that's behind the fifth fret, behind the third fret, but almost in the exact same spot. Try to move it just left and right. The more you, the less you move that, the more kind of controlled your hand is, and it can just find its place. Okay, so that's that part. We'll play one more time. Okay, and then we do. The way I count this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's kind of like what keeps me in track. Even again, if it's not even rhythmically correct, it just lets me know like that's how what to expect and how many things I'm doing. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one's an awkward down down at the end where it's like 2 downs in a row, but partly it's because I want that last chord to be accented. Like it needs to come in hard because it's like the end of you want a strong finish. So I go down, up, down, down. So we've seen all these chords. It's just like 4, 6, 7, back to the 4, 6, 6. You know, everything we've already seen. So just one strum per chord. Okay. Next bit. Back to this idea, but without the 2. Just all open, so you stay in the same place. Now let's talk about this part, because this is weird. It looks like a mess on the tab. This is just a bunch of those dead notes. Again, very common, like Propagandhi, like chug kind of rhythmic trait is like this, almost filling up the space that's not with a chord, but still trying to stay with the rhythm. Especially this fast, it just helps as like these cues, and it adds a nice texture. So kind of, it's almost probably will sound like shit slow because it's not made to, and it helps to get the rasp fast, but I'll try it anyway. So that whole part is, so I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, and just it's all muted strings, down, up, and I kind of like to span about the same size as the chord I'm landing on, kind of like we did here. Because I don't want it to be so noticeable or so different from the landing chord. Or that's typically how these kind of dead notes are used. You shouldn't have them sound so different so that they're noticed. They're supposed to be subtle. It's almost like guitar ghost notes. So you have, so this one's almost the same size as the chord we're landing on. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's talk about this shape, because this shape is probably one of the ones that is like the wonkiest in this song. It's going to be first finger on 7 on D. Fourth finger on the 9 on G, open B, and then second finger isolated on the 7th fret on E. It's a weird one. A lot of times with these kind of chords, you might have to involve your body into it, or just kind of play with the elbow, like see if it can make some space, you know. How's everyone doing that one actually? Because I'd like to, this is probably one of the harder shapes. Does anyone kind of feel like they have an issue with that shape? And maybe I can take a look and offer some tips. Oh, someone's on the chat. Please show the part again fast. Just the shape? Yeah. So 7 on the, I think the coffee's kicking in. So the first finger on the 7th fret of D, the 4th finger on the 9th fret of G. Yeah. Open B. So far it sounds like this. And then I'm just isolating it so you can see it, is the 2nd finger on the 7th fret of E. Okay. Here's how to think about this shape. The hardest part is the pinky. You can even start here. This is the sturdiest part. That seems like that's not actually even the challenging part. That seems like, okay, that's easy enough. And so if you're having problems with this, I would suggest starting there and then bringing in the difficult part. And here, I have the thumb behind the 7th fret because the thumb should always align with the 2nd finger, the middle finger. And that kind of keeps it balanced. And what you want to try to do is curve the finger so that it avoids the B string. If you're finding that that's problematic and it's flattening, the good thing to do is kind of do some either like 1, 2, 3, 4, like these kind of scale runs, and just, or anything that's melodic and lead playing, and start working on bending that pinky more. Because maybe if you've gotten away with that and just flattening it there, then maybe that's what's causing some of the problems, like you're not used to having to curve it. But that's actually I think the main thing with this shape is getting this. This is the hardest one. A good thing to do with shapes too when you're learning them and they're pretty challenging is to form it the best you can, even if it's like you're holding on for dear life, and then just try to remove it, see how well you can keep it intact. And when you do that, and if it does this, just like fingers pop off, that's actually good. You want to know this information because you want to know where your issue is. And what you want to see is like, if some fingers pop off, which ones are they? Because it's telling you that's the thing to target the most. And you could really do multiple things with this. You can reverse engineer it, maybe start on the hardest finger and then build it from there. Sometimes that's weirdly part of this too, is like even the order in which you plant the fingers can make a difference on the success. It's like your foundation. So all of those, I mean, I've given a lot, but it's like they each help. Like every shape is like a world in itself, and you have to just kind of beat it to death with all these different approaches to find what works best. But I think one of the main ones is just that kind of forming it and removing it, is it kind of lets you know where your tension is or where your problems are. It just takes time. Like it's definitely attainable. You just have to really keep at it. Okay. So that to me is like, even so far in the song, is the hardest thing we've seen. It's not an easy shape. Okay. Cool. So in the context of the song, notice too, I already formed the shape before I'm landing. So that's actually a great value in this exercise that I mentioned of removing it, because you actually you want to have that ability when you drop in. It's already formed, and it just feels like a drop in. Okay. Yeah, it takes time, but just work on it. You'll definitely get it just with some repetition. So. Okay. So rhythmically with that part from the starting dead notes, it's down, up, chord, down, up, chord. And once again, down, up, chord, down, up, chord. That's what it sounds like in the concert song. So. One more time. Okay. And then we have 2 more of those dead notes. Okay, so all together this line. Do it a few times. Let's move on from there, but any questions about what I just did, any of those parts before that too? Put it in the chat. Seems like everyone's good. Right on, cool. Let's move on. All right, this is the line where I spend sleepless nights up ahead, or I'm like mixing the lines, but you get what I'm saying. So this part has two strumming patterns. It's the first one is down, down, up, down, up. So that's for the first four chords. So the reading something in the chat. Oh, thanks. Sorry, just screaming babies are calling. Okay, so back to this. So these four chords receive the same exact rhythm. It's down, down, up, down, up. And tempo. Do it a few times. Okay. So it's just down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down. And that skip is just that, it just happens to be a longer beat, so we're just keeping the hand moving, okay? And that's just, we've seen all these shapes. 4-6-6 power chord, inverted power chord with second finger, inverted power chord with the first finger, and then the 7 and 6, the kind of C major S shape, okay? The way to transition between these, again, keep it nice and subtle. These first three are in 4th position. When we move up to this one, make sure to move up to 5th position. So the thumb has to come along for the rhyme. Yeah, my big rule, keep the thumb and the second finger aligned at all times. Okay, so that one's in 5th position. That leads into this kind of F major shape that I mentioned before, and the chord we've already seen here. It's 9, 8, 7, 7. So 3rd finger, 9th fret, 2nd finger, 8th fret, and then 1st finger barred across the 7th fret. This is the only chord in this section that gets a slightly different rhythm. It's a little busier, and it seems quicker. So it's just a bunch, it's just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, in a fast sequence. Oops. It's hard to play this on its own. Yeah, there we go. That's it on its own. Down, up, down, up, down. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it's harder to play. So it's just down, up, that 2 times. Okay. And really, that's the highest one that we've seen, at least so far. Really drill it. It kind of seems like it's targeting that, you know? Yeah. So that's that. And then after that shape, this is where we've left off. We transition back to this inverted power chord shape. So this transition, let's talk about that. So this is where we came from, this kind of major bar chord shape. Notice the pinky is going to be needed for the next shape. So we want to prep it underneath the 3rd finger the way it will be in the next shape. So what I do is kind of keep the 3rd finger, this is called a guide finger, whenever you move to a new fret on the same string, but don't remove contact. So just let it like guide over, and I'm forming this shape. So I take the bar, I remove the kind of bar, and just move the 1st finger to a normal position, and then bring the pinky in. A good way to practice this is just in the position you came from. And the things to notice, and it helps actually play in front of a mirror, because there even I noticed, oh, look at what my thumb does, just to make it the comfort level easier. These are things you want to know so that you can just feel like you're not, if you're forcing it not to do that, that's what's going to cause like a little bit of resistance. So this is what I would do as a prep to changing into that chord. And then a cool thing to do too, because we're going from 7th position down to 4, having to change shapes and also change positions, it's a lot going on. It's a lot of like internal movement and then like horizontal movement, is to just kind of play almost like this board game type of approach, where it's just start with changing into the next shape in the position you're in, and then move, now add the shifts, but only do one fret to start. Again, it's not meant to sound good. It's just kind of a physical shape changing exercise. Okay. Once you feel like, okay, I've got that down a couple times, try it now 2 frets over. Then again, you do that a few rounds, it's good. Then finally you can get to your target. That's, to me, has been the art of being able to change into any chord, is this little game. You know, it's just kind of practicing, starting on changing into the shape and from the position that I'm coming from, and then just doing it gradual, doing 1 shift, 1 fret shifts at a time. Like even stuff, if you're going from this to like something insanely different from a higher fretboard, just start it here and just move up. Be patient with it, you know. So that's the main thing I think that's to work on for that part. So we have, okay, and then back to this shape, and we go back to the first strumming pattern. Oops. So this part's trickier with the shapes. Okay, so we've seen most of these shapes, but there's a lot of maneuvering. So let's talk about this. So we start with the 6-6-4 shape that we've seen. Then we're going to transition into the shape that we started the song in with that swell. Same thing here. Notice that the second finger is not being used, and it's going to be needed for the next shape. Hover it over its target. And then 2 other important and helpful things to know is that the pinky is actually already on the string that it's going to be on the next chord. So is the first finger. I can use that, you know? So basically what I'm doing is moving first and second finger over and then expanding the pinky. And bam, it fucking gets you there. Yeah, a little better than that. So again, kind of hovering this, move this over, and then put the pinky, expand it with it. So try to keep the contact with especially the first and 4th finger. So move those, or you could even think about it that way, bringing the first and the 4th finger down and then dropping the second. So try to connect the thread there. Okay, so okay, so that's that shape, same rhythm. The next shape, we're just going to take the 2 and 4 and just move it up 1 more fret. So it's now second finger's on the 7 of D, 4th finger's on the 9 of G, and then we have 2 open. So we can remove the first finger. So it's that whole idea, try to find some kind of thread to connect these chords so that they don't feel like these independent things you have to really like dive into. Try to make it as smooth as possible. Everything so far is just 4th position, 5th position, 6th position. Okay. From here, there's a couple weird maneuvers, and this is going to really involve the arm. So we have the 7, 9, 0, 0. All right. First finger is just going to have to reach into the 7th fret of the high E string. Notice what happens with my elbow. It has to actually like hit my rib in order for that to comfortably happen. If I try to do it like that, that's making it move somewhere else. It's offering resistance. There's a lot of times in terms of technique that actually your arm movement will dictate the comfort level. So that's what you want to do here, is kind of really drill your elbow into your rib to make some space there. Okay, that's just part of it. Okay, so all together. And then it just has to move to the B string for the last chord. It goes from 7 on E to now 7 on B. So yeah, for me, it's sideways. It could also be my hand size. I'm kind of curious what everyone else is feeling. But that's also a tip, just in case if it does feel clunky, just move your elbow into your rib. Okay. Any questions about that part? Anything you want to see? Good. We can go to gallery view. Cool. Great tips. Right on. Thank you. All right. I think someone's typing something, so I'm just waiting. Can you play the whole section? Of course, yeah. that's that. Cool. Is there a mental trick to the timing? Man, you know, it's weird with timing. I have those moments where I count the way you're supposed to, like the 1 and 2 and 3, you know, and then yeah, other times it's just kind of like singing the part, knowing it really well, and just relying on that, and just kind of trusting like your hand should kind of they keep you on track, you know, because sometimes I think if you almost overthink rhythm too much, you kind of hinder yourself, because it's like, yeah, rhythm can be mathematical, obviously it's like numbers and counting, but it's also musical and it's based on feel. And I think that's where, you know, for me, I find myself being in between the two, depending on the scenario. In this case, and it's funny you should mention with the timing, this was one of the hardest parts for the song for me to actually grasp, for that same reason. And I think ultimately it was just like, just fucking sing it. Stop trying to count it. Just calculate it. So, and it's kind of goofy. Like, it's just like something like da, 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 you know, just blast it in your ears, like, and just kind of try to sing along with it. And I know this is like probably, it's a weird advice or like terrible, but it's like, you could even record yourself singing a part while the part's playing and see if it aligns, or even better, maybe playing your guitar with it, like, and so that if it does fall out, you can see the exact point where you're hearing it wrong. Okay, so that's, I don't know if that's like the best advice you want to hear, but that's what I go with a lot of times, is based on feel and just singing the part and kind of trusting, like, hey, I think this really tunes in. As far as timing, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's kind of how you can think about it. Here's the thing, just with going from different time signatures like that in the same amount of time, don't overthink it. Just meaning you can count 1, 2, 3 like nothing, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Treat that 1, 2, 3, 4 when it comes in no different. You're just adding a little, it gets heavier at the end. So if you keep the way you count, the distancing between things identical, then you should be good. You know, so I'll do it again. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hopefully that helps, but that's kind of the advice. Rhythm in itself is like kind of trippy, but hopefully that helps. So. Okay, let's talk about this you work the night shift part. So the and then the, okay, so this part, same power chord here. To transition into this chord, basically you've got two parts of the chord already formed previously. So what I actually do is kind of set the power chord before the 7, 6, 6, 9 chord. I kind of set it like a bar so that it's already in place for the next part. So this next shape is going to be second finger on the 7th fret of E, first finger barred on the 6th fret of A and D, and then the pinky on the 9 of G. But notice again, the link between these two chords is the pinky's already in its place. So I just think of not removing contact from the string, moving it up to the 9, and then keep the bar, it just moves up 2 frets. So, and then the second finger has to move. So something here that's different is maybe set the second finger a little bit lower so it just drops in, rather than before we were setting it higher over the B. And I have it closer, hovering to the E string. It's just one strum of this chord, 2 strums of that one, and then the 0, 2, 0 on each string, and then 6 of these. Everything here is a down strum, except these, I guess. Down, up, down. With this shape, I'm doing a bar, and I'm doing a 7th fret on D, the pinky on the 9th fret of G, and then the bars catching the 7th fret on B. The reason I do a pinky, and I know you probably think like you could do a 3rd finger, why aren't you doing that? Is because this part repeats itself, and I set the pinky up so that I can just keep contact and just drop right back into here. So again, those are the ideas of guide fingers, just keeping the fingers in the same place. So it just helps the transition smoother. So. And then we go back to this kind of sequence that we saw on the Sleepless Nights part, but just a shortened version, starting from that opening chord with the swell. So I call this the down-up swing rhythm. Same thing. It's like, I could tell you the timing, but I kind of go by how it sounds. And I just think it kind of, it swings. Like the spacing between the down-ups are a little awkward. So it's, shit. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So 2 of those per chord. Okay, so that's that part. And then here we just have a little fill. Go to 5th position, just down, up, down. It's 5, 8, 7, 0. So we have everything together. And then this is to me like the chorus, like the catchiest part so far. Like, good shit. Actually, the chorus was right before. We're still like almost like a pre-chorus. So let's talk about this rhythm now. So here we're on the power chord 2, 4, 4 on the A, D, and G. It's just down, up, down, up. We're gonna move up to the main power chord we've seen. Just do it down, leave some space, and then do a bunch of up, down, up, down. I'm not even gonna spell it out. I'll let you listen to it. But it's just kind of, it's pretty just steady here. So. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. And then we do some of those Propagandhi chugs, I'll call them. Those little chugs lead right back to the swinging kind of rhythm. So the shit. And then we just circle back around. Shit. Okay. Any questions about that part? Anything I did too fast? Seems like everyone's good. Yeah, if you have questions at the end, we can of course cover anything if something pops up. Yeah, so that's that part of the song, and then it's into like the chorusy part. Okay. So this part, let's talk about the strumming. Again, we're on our root chord. Down, up, and then, actually, let me finish this and then I'll go back to that measure 28 in a second. So down, up for the first chord, and then down, up, down. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. One more time. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Then we do 2 of those Propagandhi chugs, and we do them on the low strings this time. Okay. And then we come over here to this interesting shape, which is like a little power chord. And you want to keep the pinky on the 4th fret of G, the first finger on the 2nd fret of D, and then open A. So those are 3 notes. Okay. So what happens here is there's actually a hammer. So you're gonna hammer, you're gonna strum it, and then while the notes are still ringing, hammer down the third finger on the fourth fret of D. So the important thing here is to have the finger in front of the string, hovering. And the hammer-ons are not about distance. I used to kind of hammer on like too far away. I almost like had this conception, it's like a bow and arrow, like, all right, like hike back and then fire away. And it's dumb. It's all about speed. So get as close as you can and then drill the shit out of it really fast. And try not to do this hiking back. It was a habit of mine that I really had to work on getting rid of. So think of keeping it at the same level and just fire forward, okay? And then the second bit of this is barring now the first finger across A and D. Now it could lazy kind of bar across the rest of them. As long as you don't strum it, it's fine. Like, that's something about those what are called like internal bars, which like it's only really meant for the A and D strings, but again, as long as you don't strum it, you can just have it resting there. So we have 2, 2 on A and D, and then 4 on G. And the same kind of thing here, we strum it. And then hammer now, third finger on the A string. Okay, so first one, second one. So you notice on the pattern with the right hand, I put D, H, D, U, that the H stands for the hammer-on. The hammer-on, in a way, replaces the upstroke that would have happened there if we weren't doing the hammer-on. It's just a different delivery. So you want your hand to actually stay in that groove, that grid of down, up, down, up. So don't stop it. That's a tendency, is to be like, well, I'm not strumming, maybe let it linger. Kind of follow through with an up strum as if it were happening. But again, we're just replacing it with the hammer. So that's a good step to practice right there. So as the hammer-on comes down, take it like an upstroke. So down, hammer, but up. Well, you can even say that. Down, up, up. So I'll play at a regular tempo now. So it's da-da-da-da-da. So. Shit. So I'm doing down, hammer, down, up, up. One more time. Okay. And then the next one. So there we go. This one's a little trickier because that extra space, you're skipping a down strum. So it's down, hammer, skip, up, down, up, down, up. I'm repeating these a lot because you'll get this video later, so you can play it back along with it. So all together. Okay. And then we do 2 chugs to kind of restart it. And these are open string chugs. They're kind of like the same, like the percussive notes. And then we do it the same. Simile in music just means the same. So you're same pattern. Okay. The second time through, we actually add some little like slur. It's the only different one. So that's that's after those 2 hammer chords. 3, 2, 0. Down, up, down. It's like da, da, da. Okay. So all together, that part. And then we've got almost our last part. So any question, or actually Fernando, I think you had a question about 28 before we go on. Right, that was the measure. I'm gonna go back to the chat. Can you go over bar for 28 rhythm? Yeah, those are I guess in the context of the song. Let me see. So to me, I just count that as like a 1, 2, 3, 4. I know it's not like the most helpful thing, but it's I think the swing rhythm, right? It's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Just kind of like evenly spaced notes there. So I would practice even up to that, up to the first chord. Oh, the speed. So think of it as so down, 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 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That. So like that. All right, so we're on to basically the last riffs. So here, this is the first one because the one at the end is similar, but it's like a stripped down version. So I'll just play through and then we'll go from there. Kind of start back up. Okay, so this part is mostly in third position. So it's going to go the and really let's talk about actually the left hand first, and then we'll talk about the right hand. So it's just going to be note, the second fret on the E string, pull, and then an open note. The way to think about this part is in groups of 3. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the first bit. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we'll do the 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2, pull, 0. Then 3, pull, 0. 5, pull, 0. 6, pull, 0. And then, so I start with the first finger, and then the rest of it, though, I think of it as in third position. So my hand doesn't have to move as much. This is the only one that's like kind of out of it, and then everything else is just aligned. It'll make you faster, so you can just find the frets and not have to move your hand so much. Okay. The key with this one is whenever you have things that are like similarly phrased, kind of like this part, because they receive the same rhythm, do the same right hand. Don't treat leads in the same way. I think we tend to kind of unify like strumming and rhythms in that way where we do the same thing, but forget to do the same with leads. So that's how I would treat this part, and that's how I play it, where it's because we have the groups of 3 kind of repeated, my right hand does the same thing every time. It helps me, especially at that fast tempo, to keep track of where I am too, and to make sure that I'm playing each one of these exactly the same, so it becomes less information and less things to have to worry about. So I'm going down, pull, up, down, pull, up, down, pull, up, down, pull, up. So when the pull is happening, my pick is like waiting, kind of like watching the show. So I go down, but it's hovering kind of in between the E and the A strings. It's like I put it in a little invisible shelf there, so that it doesn't. Because if I do this again, you're just gonna add time and slow yourself down if you just kind of pick aimlessly, and then you have to find your place again. Keep it really small. Right in between. Let it kind of sit there in between the E and the A string, so you can just, it's ready to go on the upstroke. Okay, so that'll be for every one of them. And then the last one is just going to be 2 hammers. So I do 2 downs, partly because for this part my hand's moving kind of in this grid. So same thing as like the rhythm part that we saw, that I treat the hammer on as almost an upstroke. So actually it gives my hand a chance to kind of almost come back up, so that I catch the 2 down beats on with downstrokes. So it's like down on the hammer, my pick comes back up. So it kind of matches the rhythm. Yep. Yeah, just doing 3rd finger, 5 to 6 hammer, and then 1st and 3rd finger, 3 to 5 finger, just staying in 3rd position. Okay. And then we repeat the beginning part of that. The last 5 on this next measure is short, one of those open strikes. And we break off to the. This is just purely picking. So the important thing is I play it to where I'm in 4th position for the those first 4 notes. So it's 1st finger on 4 on A, pinky on 7 on A, back to the 4 on A, the 1st finger, then 2nd finger, 5th fret on E, and then the 6th fret, still in 4th position, 3rd finger on 6th fret of B. Right here to kind of ease me back into like kind of smoothing out, so because it's an awkward place to end, and then I don't want to feel like I have this awkward split. What I do is I take the 3rd finger and I move it back 1 fret, so it just puts me at a 3-1-3 finger position, which is like the most comfortable way to play any lead I find. So 3rd finger, 5th fret, 1st finger, 3rd fret, 3rd finger, 5th fret. So, and this is purely matching the subdivisions, like what I talked about, down up. So it's just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. What's important about getting this right is that, again, you want to keep your hand in this grid. So, and especially you want to end on an up, because you're going to circle back around a riff and it just will naturally come back down. Because if you end on a down, it's going to be awkward and you have to kind of circle around to restart it. And what you do want to avoid is like the reversing of your picking pattern, because it's like you're playing a new part. So I'd say one of the most important things is really be disciplined about outlining your right hand with this kind of stuff. What I would even do, and I know some of the people who take lessons with me, what I say is like do right hand isolation, especially with something like this, is hard. It's like trying to play this part without the right hand. What helps to keep you on track of what you do is sing it. So it'd be bum 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 bum. It's tricky, but it's cool because it actually makes you. It shows you, like, do you really know what your right hand should be doing, or are you relying on your left hand to kind of tell it? So if you really want to feel like sturdy, like like feel strong in both hands, that kind of stuff really changed my playing, and I encourage it so much. So that you almost feel more like a drummer as a guitar player too, which I think is also cool. So you feel like really in touch with what the right hand is doing for your parts. Okay. Any questions about that part? Looks good. Cool. Let's carry on. So basically at this point, we go back to the beginning of the song and we just, or like it comes back to the riff. So Kind of does a little. And then we just do everything like over again. You guys know the song. Just like listen to recording. Everything that happens after this is on this page. It's just kind of figuring out that transition. We could talk more about that in a little if you want, but it's really it's just kind of the same information, just one after the other, no real variations. But let's talk about that ending riff, because this part is kind of insane. It's probably like the fastest shit that I've ever played, and I want to talk about how to get to that point and what to listen to for. So the beginning of it is pretty similar to the previous thing we just did. But the way that I like to count this is 6, 6, 4. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the first bit. And counting, like keeping a tally of how things are grouped is really important with this kind of fast stuff. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice I did that same thing where I treat the pull off as my upstroke. So I'm going down, skip, down, up, down, up, down, skip, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And then a lingering 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so. All right, and those are palm muted, actually. I think at least I jumped ahead to the second time. So yeah, let me actually start with the first part. It's the same rhythm, it's just not open and no palm mute. So the first time it's open, just like before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Again, maybe not the proper counting, but it helps me to kind of keep an idea of where everything sits. And just keep the counting even. And then the next part, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and then we break away to that same ending as before. Okay, all together. A trick I should add, because you're coming out of like these bouncy open E strings, I use the first finger to mute, to shut off that ringing note. Because the last thing you want is like playing this lead and you have this overlapping thing. It doesn't really like cut through nicely. So I tend to, for at least that first note, set the finger to where the padding of my finger lightly touches it to mute it. So. Right there. Okay, so it's a cool little trick there. You can do that with chords too. So in case you accidentally strum it, you won't hear it. Okay, so back to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Same thing. So the next part, this is the hardest part, the very ending, starts similarly, but we just add palm mutes after the first two little subdivisions. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3, 4, 5, 6 part of the beat. 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. The reason I'm not going, I'm kind of outlining this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 part kind of on its own. The hard thing about this part is the switch, because we change subdivisions. We go from kind of 16th notes, which are like 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana, 4 eana, and we change to what are called sextuplets, which are squeezing in 6 even attacks per downbeat. And the downbeat in this song is already this. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's kind of tricky to seamlessly go between them. My advice is to do them separately, feel confident on their own, and then start bridging them, kind of, and that's how I'm going to show it to you right now, like to where you can seamlessly go between the two. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'd go 1, And another way to count this is 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. The next part, the fastest part is I'll play really fast. So that part, whenever you're going that wicked fast, you don't rely on your wrist anymore. For the most part, with single string playing, it's mostly wrist. When it's that insanely fast, you change. It's like changing gears. You change where the source is coming from. It's gonna be forearm. Notice when I'm doing this, the motion's like it's like I'm shaking hands with like a little person. And I know it's such a fucking stupid like analogy, but it's just like it's that kind of like a shaking hand gesture. Remember those when we used to do that? So, where it's like, think about it that way. It's the same movement, but like you're barely moving. The way to count this is in groups of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I'll do it slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is something you have to put to the metronome, like, and build up to that speed. My advice with metronome work and breaking your tempo is find the speed in which you could play something like this, the fastest to where it's perfect, and do it there. I used to practice things where I'd start like really slow because I thought that's kind of what I should have been doing, and then kind of build up. But I do something different now, where it's like find like the threshold where like things are fine and then they fall apart just a couple notches up and practice there. And then what you can do is kind of toggle between that, like practice at your top tempo where you play something perfect, and then maybe dial it down a few notches around that to kind of bring in some more relaxation, and then do spurts of like double the tempo just to also get a feel for what that should feel like, because you also want to practice fast because your body has to get used to it, so something like kind of doing halftime double time, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6, and do it in little spurts, and then try to do, okay, let me do 2 sets of them halftime, 2 sets of them real time. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Even if your pick kind of starts falling apart, do it, because that's what's gonna. You have to just put yourself into it, dive into it, and that's actually leads me to the segue into these exercises that I gave you. Good stuff to work on. The speed picking workout is just single string playing, and really focus on your right hand, keeping it nice and small. You can still have a lot of power there, but make sure the movement is like at least at kind of moderate tempos coming from the wrist. So this first speed picking warm up is just you could do it without palm muting, and then with. I'll do it with for this example. So I'm just keeping everything at a down up. So 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. What's cool about these, you could do them on any string. They're really helpful for single string. My advice with the left hand is don't hold your fingers down. I used to do that where, they kind of told you like, oh, you can just keep one finger down and just play the rest like this. I've kind of since changed my tune, because I actually, for one, when you're playing fast, if some fingers are down and then others are going down, it doesn't let me know like which note I'm actually playing. It kind of gets like confusing. So I do a one at a time thing where the note that I'm playing is the only finger that's down, because it kind of sends a message like that's the one that's playing. And it also encourages, it helps to avoid gripping, because if you did this, you're kind of holding on, especially fast. That's the tendency. So that's what I would suggest with this, just one finger at a time. So that's what I do with this one. So something you could do here too is just keep your, think of this, these are 16 notes, so they're 16 attacks per measure. So the way you count is 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and so just doing this kind of daily. Remember the whole tilt of the pick? Keep everything relaxed, keep it small. Just wrist motion. Then if you want to dabble with that really fast one, think of it like in the shaking hand thing. You know, so that's the general idea. So these are just a couple exercises to really work on the fine tuning of it. Another good visuals, like if you're like shading, like with a color pencil, think of that with your pick when you're and just kind of using the wrist. Think of that that feeling. That's kind of what those fast picking motions resemble. A good one to do too is just open G for like 5 minutes with a metronome. Just kind of sit there, put a timer. Same thing, stay relaxed, keep it small. Try little spurts of fast. You know, if it falls apart, it's okay. You have to just keep doing it. Okay, and then the next two things are kind of ways of helping finger independence. This is warm up number 4 and 5. They're kind of like almost the same exercise, just inverted. I'll show it here. So the way you'll start this is just a shape 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And here it's kind of like a crawling exercise to where you have the 4 fingers and then you just move one down. Okay. So the first one is 9, 10, 11, 12. Then you move the first finger down. Just that one. Keep the rest of them. And then the next measure, you move the second finger down. And the third finger down. And the fourth finger down. Be careful with your wrist. Do not kill your wrist, because this is something that can. If this is hard for you to do, what you can do as an alternate, maybe try to outline it without pressing it. You could always do like, and maybe just kind of shift them over. Just so you're not gripping. The worst thing you can do is hurt your wrist, because you're gonna really pay for it. Like every time you pick up guitar, it's gonna hurt, and you don't want that. So that's what I would say is a good kind of, if it's just feeling like too much, just release the pressure off the strings. And even if some fingers move along with it, that's what you're trying to work on, just finger independence and the stretching. And then you just keep going. You could even do this without the right hand, you know, and just kind of, again, lightly, not even touch the strings. And then the other one's the same idea, just the other direction, kind of hanging this way, first finger. This kind of movements are great because, like, I gave you this one because it reminded me of the part where it's like, where it's going all of those chords. There's a lot of that kind of finger independence movement. What I find is that if I'm playing something and my finger, like one finger that has to move, just won't, I kind of, you know, remember in Kill Bill when she's like in the pickup truck, she just came out of the hospital like from the coma, and she wiggles her toe. That's kind of like what I do with my fingers if they're not working. Wiggle the one that you want to move, and then move it. It's weird. It's like it wakes it up without waking up everything else, and then it's like you kind of gain control of that and you isolate it. So yeah, those are a couple things I think that would be a cool, like relate to a bit of the techniques that you see here. So we have a little bit of time left, not much. Does anyone want to come, no pressure if you don't want to, come on the screen and play a little, that I can offer feedback, or even just ask any questions relating to the songs. It could be anything. It could even be writing stuff or any kind of technique. Let me try to unmute you guys now. It's weird. I have a button for mute all, but not unmute all. Okay, it says allow. Now I can get it to where you can unmute yourself. So if you want to talk, go ahead and unmute yourself. No takers. Well, cool. Well, all right. No worries. Well, fuck. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. Oh, wait, someone unmuted themselves.
Okay, I ask a quick question.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you mind showing your, I mean, like I know it's not your like tour setup, but maybe like what you have going on with your amp or like a pedal or anything like that?
Yeah, I just have to move the camera awkwardly, so bear with me. Okay. So amp. The amp I'm using. I'm trying to see. Okay, yeah, you can see that. There's the big ass Ethernet cable I'm using. It's a JCM 2000. We actually, when I first joined the band, we were using JCM 800s, which are great. I actually have that stacked on top of this one. We moved to JCM 2000 just because we wanted to have like a clean foundation, especially with like songs like Note to Self or any or like lower order things where we go like pure clean. It's just like a JCM 800 cannot get there. So that's like the main, I think the most consistent head that kind of works for us. So that's the head we have. As far as settings, it's very, like bass is almost a 10. Mids are like 7. Trebles kind of around 4, and then gains kind of up to 7. Because I think for chugging, you want obviously the low end so that it feels rounded, and then I think mids have to be high too to get the kind of really, yeah, like you know what mids sound like.
Right.
But like, so that's kind of that on as far as the amp setting on its own. In terms of pedals, I can show you what I have here. It's stupidly big. It kind of resembles like the axe effects that we use. I try to put as much of this into that, and so our main kind of foundation will be like I think it's like the Maxon OD 808 kind of tube screamer-esque. So just that overdrive, but we have like compressor and noise gate for sure, especially because of heavy music, like in so much gain, like it'll just feedback for days.
Yeah,
that's a kind of crucial thing. It's weird with compression. I think there's like I know there's a school of thought where it's cheating, and I think for some time I maybe ignorantly agreed. I've kind of since changed my tune, and partly it's because of if you write stuff that really feels like it has a full range, like from the low strings to the high strings, I feel like you want a balance of the two, or you want kind of like a piano player where you would, they don't have, if they play low notes, they're as loud as typically, like as the high notes. The compressor, I feel like, achieves that for the guitar, where without it, your low notes might get really like kind of swept under, especially in a room. So I like having a compressor, and for stuff like swells, it just kind of keeps the signal alive for longer. So I really like it for that. For vibrato, same thing. And yeah, for any kind of like very rhythmic playing, not that all music's rhythmic, but you know what I mean, like the kind of percussive playing, it really lends itself to achieving that too, I think. And then yeah, noise gate. Noise gates are weird because like the one I have here is probably the best one. It's really pricey for a noise gate, but I've gone through a few rounds, and I'd have to say it's really worth it. I've done the Boss one, I've done the Decimator one, and they have enough to where it sounds like, it doesn't sound like your guitar anymore, where this is the most transparent. It's pretty wild. Like when I heard it, I was like, this is unreal. So pretty worthy investment, especially, again, playing out, and if you have dirty power, or like a basement or something, it's just kind of nice to feel like you don't strum a chord and you want to rest, and it's not like, so I'd recommend that. And then everything else, actually, the next song I'm going to do probably in a few weeks is Note to Self, and I'm going to break down like the effects for that one. So definitely a lot of reverb, for me. So I like, it's like a mix of like Fender amp reverb is like what I like, and then also like ambient reverb to where like you can't even tell it's like a guitar anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The space sounds.
Yeah. And then last thing, a volume pedal. Like I know I personally like to use it just because I kind of like, in terms of trails, I like for them to kind of ease out smoothly rather than being like something where you're strumming a chord You know, the end, like it's supposed to be just
Okay,
clean.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, like treat it like you're recording. You know, that's how I feel about it. So yeah, hopefully
Cool.
I can talk about this all day, so I won't.
Yeah, I mean, most of it's way above my head, but thanks for showing. Yeah.
What pickups? We use the JBs on the bridge for the pickups. Unfortunately, my SG's in Winnipeg. It's like the one time I actually left it up there. I've never left it up there coming back home, and of course, couldn't have predicted a pandemic, so that's why I don't know what happened right now. But yeah, that's what we use. I've been thinking about seeing what a jazz pickup would sound like on the bass, because we use like the bass pickup for stuff like duplicate keys, like the intro, very kind of smooth low end stuff. So I was kind of curious if that would sound good. Strings, just a Diodarios, pens. Yeah, just your basic ones. Cool. Well, this is fun, everyone. Like, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. Like, it's kind of what I do. I enjoy the songs, and it's rad to be able to just like hang out with so many guitar players, nerd out, and just help you play these tunes. Like, they're fun, and I know they're kind of like a mystery. Just so you know, I'll probably do these like two times a month. I'll kind of have all your emails. I can send you some. This is recording, so I am gonna actually upload it, save it, probably put it maybe on YouTube, actually, rather than send a file, just unlisted, and I'll send you the link so you can just watch it back and stuff.
Great.
Cool.
I'll be watching many times.
Right on. Cool. Cool. Well, thanks so much, and take it easy.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Take care, guys. Bye. Take care.